Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What day is it today? Today, amongst the Shia community, would be considered as one of the last days of mourning within the period extending from the 1st of Muharram up until the 20th of Safar, which is the day of Arba'een. And on this particular date, Islamic date, within the calendar, we have the Shahadat anniversary, the Martyrdom anniversary of the 11th Shia Imam Hassan al-Askari. And previous to that, we had last week the Martyrdom anniversary of none other than the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and I uploaded the video with a discussion with our friends on why it happened, how it happened, what the consequences of it happening, the issue relating to succession. So I don't know how many of you watched that, how many of you people watched that, but I hope that those of you who haven't will be able to take a look at it. And that was the last video uploaded before the Arba'een vigil that was done outside Joseph Chamberlain College. Before we start, there's another very important date. Last night, which was the Shahadat, the Martyrdom anniversary, a fight happened between somebody called Jason. I can't remember his surname because it's too complicated to remember, so unusual, and Khabib Nurmogammedov. Now this is me as an artist, kind of like come in there. There's a picture I've drawn. Look, I really should be able to edit by now, but I'm not using any facility on my phone or my laptop to do that. But I did this picture, and this was like in Syria when on the date of Khabib Nurmogammedov fighting Conor McGregor. So I actually took this into a school, an art lesson, like a couple of days ago in a school that I was teaching, and the kids recognised, oh, that's Conor McGregor. Oh, that's Khabib Nurmogammedov. And I know it looks a little bit like a caricature, but I was inspired at the time. I was doing artwork, and you can see some of the detail in the image. I put it up on Facebook at the time. I can't remember if I put it up on my actual channel, but we'll go back. We'll go back to Khabib and his fight that he had with Jason after speaking about the important event of Imam Hassan al-Askari Islam and his existence, the purpose of his existence and mission, within as far as Islam is concerned, the significance of him being the father of the 12th Imam al-Mahdi Islam, and him being born under literal house arrest. Brother Nabil Arwan did a lecture last night, which I was fortunate and blessed enough to attend, and I actually took some notes during his lecture. It was like an online lecture he did, and so he lives down the road from me anyway. These are some of the notes that I want to kind of like pass on to you that I wrote, and maybe you can ponder upon them. Are we closer to Allah in and on the last days of mourning? These days from Ashura, from the 1st of Muharram up until Ashura, the realization of the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his effort to fight or stand up against falsehood. Where are we in relation to that? How have we taken from the lesson of Karbala, first of all? And have we developed our thought processes, our determinations in relation to what we've learned, what we've understood, what we've felt, what we understand to be our obligations? Are we closer to Allah in and on the last days of mourning? Have I understood it? What have I taken from whatever it is that I've listened to in relation to all of this? Has it changed me? Have I manifested any of it into my heart? Then the 9th, 10th, and 11th Imams all lived under oppression. What is Samarra? In my previous videos spanning the years on my channel, I'm going to reload one of them where I've actually gone to the shrine of Imam Hassan Askari and gone into Samarra. Nabil in his lecture last night talked about that feeling of woe, that feeling of oppression once you're entering into that area, because there's so much security, and everybody knows that in Samarra, over 12 years ago, around about 12 years ago, Daesh, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, whoever was behind it, they bombed that shrine, they bombed it to pieces, and it had to be rebuilt. So I went to Samarra in a group, and I filmed the rebuilt version of that holy place. And I was with a group, and there is a feeling that one gets when one goes in. It's a mixture of feelings. Imam Hassan Askari, the 11th Imam, was born under house arrest. Subhanallah. He would never speak. These are the conditions that he lived in. He would never speak to his Shias, which there was complete openness. He couldn't, because he was being spied upon, watched all the time, monitored all the time. What other kind of oppression were the Imams under? The representatives of not only the 11th Imam, but the 8th Imam, Ali Raza alayhi salam, actually stole from them. Yeah. And so how does that, we talk about our Imams being infallible. Quite clearly, not everyone else is. Even though one is a representative of another, it's possible that there can be corruption. And so, how difficult was it for the Imams to pass the message on of the righteousness of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the guidance that they were meant to embody as being the prime leaders of Ahlul Bayt and the Imam and the nation. Quran says, وَلَكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ, as we know, there was a guide for every nation. The 11th Imam says, the one who controls his nafs, his personal self, the one who controls his nafs, the people must do his taqleed. Yeah, someone who's just, right, who's knowledgeable, of course, right. Someone must do his, emulate his way, his path, and so this was the Imam, according to what Brother Nabil was saying last night, saying that these words kind of like laid the foundations of modern day taqleed, where the Shias do something that is known as they follow a mujtahid, yeah, someone who's learned enough to be able to make religious rulings and laws in the modern context, form them in the modern context. Yeah, so this saying lays the foundations of taqleed. Imam Hassan Askari is put in prison, however. Al-Hassan Askari, is given the title of Zaki, however, by his own oppressors, who are there to guard him, to ensure that he stays under control, who's deemed to be some kind of prisoner criminal, are affected by his piety, and themselves give him a title of Az-Zaki, the pure. Yeah. The 11th Imam's instruction was for people not to say salam to him on the street because the authorities were spying on him. So when Imam Hassan Askari was walking down those streets of Samarra whilst being watched, he was saying to the common people, please, don't approach me in a way. He was, because, I'm being spied upon. That puts you in danger as well, how he managed to get his message out was through a very intricate, obviously different intricate kind of like way, means through letters to different people. So he addresses his Shias, and there's certain points that Brother Nabil puts forward. And let me just readjust the camera for a second, so I can kind of like make it easier to address you guys. Right, he addresses Shias, be conscious of Allah. And then we ask ourselves, are we really God conscious? Are we aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us? To require taqwa, piety, one must abstain. What is the purpose of a human being? Right, we are all, these are notes that I'm taking up, not the points in general that wouldn't book us, but like these are things that espouse from what Imam Hassan has said. What is the purpose of a human being? We are all in the pursuit of pleasure. A thief wants to be successful. Can we utilize the pleasure that we desire for the sake of Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a system. Allah wants to show you the pleasure, a pleasure that is everlasting. Why, you will ask to yourself, is there a hole inside of me? Because we are chasing the dunya, the world, right? And a quote from Imam Hassan Askari here is that the dunya is something that has been made to be destroyed, right? So those that chase the pleasures of this dunya, of this world, of this worldly life, will never have anything truly fulfilled. But if you chase the afterlife, what's good for you in the afterlife, if you behave in a way that kind of like you have the afterlife in your vision, right? And that's going to have another effect upon you. To achieve a happy body, one goes to the gym. Ijtihad lillah, to strive for Allah. How do you do that? How do you strive to be good for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How does that happen? You would force yourself to pray, to give for, I can't see what I've had. Yeah, to give, to strive. Yeah. Putting yourself forward for the sake of Islam, enforcing your prayers even if you don't want to pray them. That's one way of striving. Yeah. When I stagnate, deviation comes to take away the realities. Yeah, so stagnating, right? You may have had a spiritual momentum in the month of Ramadan. You may have had a spiritual momentum in the month of Muharram, but did you allow yourself to jump onto that or be affected by the springboard that was available to you to go forward, or did you stop? Did you stagnate? Did you make an effort to move forward, to improve who you are for the sake of the afterlife? Imam Hassan Askari says, I call you to telling the truth, to be truthful. Yeah. And when I think about this personally, you know, then in a way, because there's so many accusations about taqiyya and kind of like hiding um, the truth for the benefit of the sake of either yourself or other people. But in consideration also of the purity of truth, one would say, don't ever do anything that you have to tell a lie about, you know. Don't do anything that you yourself have to tell a lie about, because that would embarrass you. Consider that. I'm just saying, I call you to telling the truth, is what Imam Hassan Askari Islam says. I command you to retain the amana that has been given to you. Yeah. The secrets, the safeguarding, the safekeeping of somebody's property or secrets. He commands you that. Yeah. Be it a secret or otherwise. And there's a final thing that Brother Nabil One said, which is worth sharing. He encouraged the 11th Imam long sajda. Yeah. And when a person is hungry and when he is in sajda, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alayhi salam is more liable to listen to this man's prayers. Think about that, really honestly. You know, when a person is hungry, when he's made a sacrifice of some kind and has been affected by it, then one in humility becomes closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there is an amal. Yeah. And this made me think about the dhikr that the followers of the tasawwuf or Sufi people do, where there's a stress on how one breathes the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from out of his body and breathes back in again and says in the name of Allah again. There's an exhale, but there's an inhale as well. And what is there in that inhale, you know? And that's something that I thought about when Brother Nabil said, Ya Rabbi in sajda. Say that, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, oh my Lord, in sajda until your breath runs out. That is an amal, it is a recommendation of one of the Imams, that if you do that, if you say Ya Rabbi whilst in prostration until your breath runs out, and then you ask after that your prayer, yeah, for your desire or your want, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more likely to fulfill that, because you've used the extent of your body's worth in remembering Allah. You know, think about that. You've used the extent of your body's worth in remembering Allah through your breath. Its physical limitation has been reached in one go, and Allah will reward that. You know, imagine what else is that we can do with our bodies so that we can reach their limit in the service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the service of something that's good. Consider. Then he says, treat neighbours in a good way. This is another qawl of Imam Hassan al-Askari Islam, saying that treat your neighbours in a good way. That there are 40 neighbours in each direction. So now we're looking at community, yeah, in each direction, any which way direction from where you live. 40 neighbours, 40 people, houses where people live. They are your neighbours, yeah. And then there's something very there's something here that Imam Hassan Islam encourages. Offer your prayers amongst them. Amongst them, who? Amongst the brothers of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, amongst the other Muslims. Yeah. Imam Hassan Islam is saying that we should be a part of their communities, in the sense that we are able to show a good level of cooperation for the sake of the unity of Islam. What else? And this is something that within we can see the Shia communities. There is a strand amongst them that strives against the whole idea that we should be unified in one way or another. But you can see from the rulings of Sayyid Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and Sayyid Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini how important it is to actually join them in prayer. You know, the permissibility of joining the Ahl Sunnah brothers in prayer. Still praying, you know, in the way that the Shia Muslims pray with their hands down. You can't pray with their arms folded because that is an innovation. But not to the Sunnis, it isn't. So we can pray with them with their arms unfolded, and we can, you know, join in their prayer. Their according to what Brother Nabil Awan was saying, the Sunni Imam who's leading the prayer can lead your prayer, but you're still obligated to pray in the way that our Imams have told us to, which is with the hands unfolded. But even there's a commonality, my friends. Understand that the Maliki school of thought, as far as Ahl Sunnah are concerned, Sunni Muslims are concerned, therefore the Maliki one says that you pray with your hands open, you don't fold them. And every single Sunni Muslim, at the point where he says Sami Allahu liman hamidah prior to going into ruku', his arms are unfolded. So if they're unfolded at that particular point, then please ask yourself, you know, why are they folded at another point? So you've got a combination in your prayer, my Sunni brothers, where your hands are folded and unfolded, and they're not folded when you're in tashahhud, in the seated position. Your hands are on your thighs, and for a part of your standing in your prayer, your hands are also down on your thighs as well, which is the way that the Shia Muslims pray throughout the whole of the prayer. It's more uniform. The Quran doesn't say that you pray with your arms folded. It tells you to stand and pray. When you stand straight, you know. I'm not going to go into all of that. That's another talk. Maybe I've mentioned it to some of you people before, but yeah. So unity with our Sunni Muslim brothers. Other attend their funeral prayers as well. You know, show them that you're part of the community. Conduct yourself amongst them. Fulfill their rights. Fulfill their rights. Now, I've gone for quite a long while now. You know, just going over some of the points that Brother Nabil spoke about last night, and going on to unity. Is it any wonder, I think to myself sometimes, that instinctively a person sees something that's good, regardless of whether that good is from their own community or not, but they witness it and they feel it. The last time I had a feeling like that was through Jeremy Corbyn, you know, and for me, he was on the winning side. He didn't get there though. He didn't reach the end of the race, and he wasn't allowed to get there. But what he stood for, very few people, in the way that he stood for it, very few people within that particular, you know, group, the Labour Party, I think will stand for again. So to me, he's won regardless of, even if he hasn't, because he stood for what he believed in, and that made its mark on me. I followed, you know, some other people are following the defeat of Donald Trump, for example, and it's something that's close to them because they can't wait to see him off. But I followed Jeremy Corbyn. I followed him because of what I thought he believed in, and what he stood for was very, very different from what the other politicians were about. And then I lost interest after that because he was like the one guy. But you know, sometimes it takes one guy to be able to, you know, say to yourself, no, I want to cover this area, and that one person can influence you. Another person, of course, like that is Khabib Nurmogammedov, yeah, who fought last night, and unwittingly on the night of the Shahadat of Imam Hassan Askari, he's not a Shia Muslim, but his values, yeah, what he stood for, and as far as we can see, you know, were pious, you know, but believing in Allah, the mention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, the going down into sajda. Oh, and last night, the crying. The crying because he had completed his mission, you know, and and was successful in it, and that really reminded me of how um, we react to the mission of Imam Hussein in Karbala. Imam Ali alayhi salam, obviously, when he was shaheed, at the point of him being struck within the mihrab of the prayer, he says, "Fustu birabbil Kaaba, by the Lord of the Kaaba, I have succeeded," because he succeeded um, in living a life of piety. He couldn't be won, or defeated on the battlefield, so he was defeated in prayer. He was, which means he won because he was killed unjustly. We'll look at people like Qasem Soleimani, Shaheed, and he himself also, he fought against justice throughout his life, and was killed innocently whilst not in combat. And so these are the points where you say to yourself, "Wow, these people have succeeded because they made that sacrifice." Now, why do I say all this in relation to Habib? Because you sometimes you feel that you're following a person who you either is on the winning side or is on the right side, and Habib Nurmogammedov, because of his diligence toward an Islamic lifestyle, you think to yourself, "Wow, you know, I'm impressed. He's kept an Islamic identity." And we watched the fight through live stream yesterday between him and Jason, um, and the way that the young man defeated the guy was in a fashion and the style was absolutely epic. He was very technical, and he caused the least amount of bodily harm to the person. I was speaking with a friend Ali Raza, and my other friends who was watching this fight with that, and wrestling, yeah, in Islam is a sunnah, yeah, and he wrestled the man down. He didn't punch his face and kind of like to the point where there was blood and the man couldn't fight anymore. And that was most certainly the intention of Jason. He wanted car crashes, or he wanted to smash this guy proper, or anyone who's in front of him. And he started in that fashion. And Habib did the exact opposite. In the very first round, he grappled him down. And he went into, and he wrestled him. And if that first round hadn't finished sooner, yeah, then he would have been out. He would have tapped out then. But he got him to tap out, in the second round. And unfortunately, at the very point where he managed to tap Jason out, Khabib managed to tap Jason out, the live stream went off, and then it went on again about 10 seconds later, because that's all the time it took, 10 to 20 seconds, that was it. And we saw Khabib in sajda on the floor, and I thought, has he lost? He's curled up in a ball and he's on the floor, and then they're saying that he won, obviously, because he tapped him out. So we missed the tap out. Obviously, we saw the repeat about kind of like a minute later. We saw the repeat of it, but and saw how he did it, which is absolutely amazing. But Khabib Nurmogammedov was crying, yeah, in the sajda. I thought, this is special. This is absolutely epic. He's crying. He stood up. He was crying. He was crying for a good minute, yeah, and then he announced his retirement. And he said it was like that. This is, I've done this for my father, I've done it for my dad. Yeah, my dad passed away, and in the previous interviews I've been watching all day long, on YouTube. He was saying we'll see whether the passing away of my father, who was his trainer, has made me a weaker man or a stronger man. And Jason, when you see some of the fights he'd been, he looked pretty invincible, and this guy was a nice guy actually, because he took the defeat really well, and he said, well, he just looked undefeatable, but yeah, Habib tamed him right down, and it was a mercy as well, in the sense that he left him uninjured. He kind of choked him out, and he left him uninjured. So there wasn't, and he said himself that I haven't got any injuries on me, so I can fight again in 6 weeks. He's good to go. He's good to go again, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him, the best shot. But 100%, 110% credit to Nurmogammedov, Khabib Nurmogammedov, for doing what he did. He listened to his mother, and he goes, "My mother told me not to fight again after my father died, but I said, Mum, just one more fight, and that's it, and I'll finish." He didn't. He kept to his word. So, and there's so many parallels in for a person like Khabib Nurmogammedov, in the form of another great fighter, Muhammad Ali, who's also Muslim. But we see that there, I'm sure, somewhere along the line, I don't know, somehow, I think, feel and believe that there is asarat of the king of warriors, the king of fighters, upon and within, as an influence within any Muslim fighter, in the form of the spirit of Imam Ali alayhi salam, who was, the Prophet said that La fata illa Ali, la sayfa illa Zulfikar, there is no youth like Ali, there is no sword like Zulfikar. And we consider as well the ethic, of fighting on the battlefield or in any fight, and how to be fair in a fight. And we look at the example of Imam Ali alayhi salam in the sense of how, he warned the person prior to fighting them. There's a call to Islam on every count, even on the battlefield, for a person to give up and turn to the right path. We see that with Imam Hassan alayhi salam in the battlefield. Horror comes to his side. He invites the people he's fighting to come onto his side. And one very final thing, you think about, like, the short, sharp, hard attack, car crash side of fighting, that Jason who fought Khabib Nurmogammedov, that was his intention, to see Khabib's blood. But it wasn't Khabib's intention to see, obviously, it wasn't Khabib's intention to see Jason's blood. It was to see him fairly defeated in the most humane way, without smashing his face in, has wrestled him down. So I'm an artist, so I look at intricacies of certain things, and I make links to different things, and so I've always wondered, and maybe you've also wondered, as to why the Islamic sword or dagger is curved. It's curved. And something came to light when I watched the drama. There's a really popular Syrian drama, Bob